Welcome back to The Forge. I'm Joey, and today we're talking about the fight that doesn't end when you take off the uniform. We're talking about veteran suicide. Now, before you think, oh great, another depressing podcast, stick with me, because this isn't about doom and gloom. This is about understanding a problem that's been going on too long. Recognize who it's actually affecting, and highlighting the people doing something about it. You've probably seen the awareness campaigns, the hashtags, the black rings, the fundraisers. Good. That means people are paying attention. But awareness without understanding doesn't save lives, and understanding without action is just noise. Today we're going to talk about what veteran suicide actually looks like, who's dying and why, and most importantly, what's working to stop it. This isn't light, but it's not hopeless either. Because here's the thing about a forge. You don't just melt things down. You reshape them into something stronger. Let's get to work. So let's start with what we know. According to the VA's most recent comprehensive data from 2022, there are 6,407 veteran suicides that year. That's an average of about 17 and a half per day, every single day. Suicide was the 12th leading cause of death for veterans overall, but here's what hits different. For veterans under a certain age, it's the second leading cause of death. Not combat, not training accidents, suicide. Now here's the part that most people miss, and it's important. Of those daily deaths, about 7 per day are veterans who are recently connected to VA healthcare. The other 10 or so, they're not in the system at all. 2/3 of veterans who die by suicide aren't connected to the VA. Let me say that again. 2/3 aren't getting the help from VA. They're not in the system. They're out there on their own, either because they don't think they need the help, don't know it's available, or are too stubborn to ask. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't need help, I'm good. Brother, sister, that was me. I spent nearly 2 years homeless after I got out. The whole time I was fine, until I wasn't. The stubbornness that makes you a good soldier makes you a terrible patient. Here's another thing that most people don't realize. The majority of veterans dying by suicide aren't 25-year-old combat vets fresh from Afghanistan. They're 50 and older. Vietnam-era veterans, Gulf War veterans, guys who have been out for decades carrying weight nobody sees. We focus so much on the young combat veterans, and don't get me wrong, they need support. But we're overlooking generations of veterans who have been fighting this fight in silence for years. When's the last time you saw a viral campaign specifically focused on helping Vietnam vets with mental health? Yeah, exactly. The image in everyone's head is the young veteran struggling with PTSD from recent combat. And that's real. But the 70-year-old Vietnam vet who's been self-medicating with alcohol for 40 years? The Gulf War vet dealing with chronic pain and feeling like nobody cares anymore? They're dying too. But here's what's really caught my attention in the research. The highest suicide rates aren't in those groups. The highest rates are among veterans with sedative use disorders and psychotic disorders. These are the quiet killers. They don't get hashtags or awareness campaigns. And then there's all the stuff that doesn't show up as a diagnosis at all. Moral injury, that's when you did something or saw something or were a part of something that violates your core values. It's not PTSD, it's deeper than that. It's the wound that doesn't heal because it's in who you are, not just what you experienced. Chronic pain, you spent years carrying heavy gear, jumping out of planes, getting blown up, or just grinding your body down. Now you're out and every day hurts. The VA gives you pills and they don't work, or they work too well, and now you got a whole different problem. Lack of purpose. In the military, you knew your mission, you knew your role, you mattered. Then you got out and you're just another resume in a stack trying to explain why squad leader should translate to middle management. Turns out expert in breaking things and making people uncomfortable isn't a LinkedIn skill. Financial stress. You got out thinking you'd land on your feet, but civilian jobs don't pay like you thought, or your skills don't translate, or you ended up in Manual labor that's destroying what's left of your body. Isolation. When you were in, you had a team. People who got it. People who had your back. And now, you're surrounded by civilians who mean well but have no frame of reference for your experience. You can't talk about the stuff that matters because they don't understand, so you just stop talking. A recent study pointed out something crucial. Leadership quality during your service matters decades later. Bad leaders create trauma that lasts a lifetime. The toxic command climate, the abusive NCO, the officer who didn't give a shit about his troops, that stuff doesn't just disappear. And here's the kicker. All of this compounds. It's not just one thing. It's chronic pain plus financial stress plus isolation plus lack of purpose plus trauma plus the cultural expectation that you're supposed to just deal with it. You know what they say about a forge? You need heat, pressure, and the right tools to shape metal. Too much heat and too much pressure without the right support structure, the metal shatters. And that's what we're seeing. The pressure's there, the heat is there, but we're not always providing the right support at the right time. All right, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. Because here's the truth. Suicide is preventable. Full stop. It's not inevitable. And there are people and organizations out there proving it every single day. Let's start with the big one, the Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988, press 1, that's it. Or go to the veterancrisisline.net and chat online. It's available 24/7. And I'm not just throwing that out there because I'm supposed to. The data shows it actually works. Veterans who call the crisis line are 10 times more likely to connect with VA mental health care afterward. The suicide rate drops by over 22% in the first month after someone reaches out. And these aren't just feel-good numbers. This is lives saved. Now let's talk about the organizations on the ground doing the work. 22 Kills started as a social media campaign by Marine veteran Jacob Schick. He had survived an IED blast in Iraq and lost his leg. He went through hell in recovery, and instead of letting it destroy him, he built something to help others. They run programs like Stay the Course for Mental Wellness, Forge. Yeah, they use Forge metaphors too. Wind therapy using motorcycles for connection and healing, and Watch for family support. They've expanded beyond veterans to include first responders through their One Tribe Foundation. These guys are in the trenches doing the real work. Mission 22 focuses on getting veterans into treatment programs, building memorials to keep the conversation going, and training ambassadors in communities across the country. These ambassadors educate people and connect veterans to resources. They're building a network of people who give a damn. Save 22 takes a grassroots approach, community, connection, hiking events, bringing veterans together so they realize they're not alone. They operate on the principle that not all wounds are visible, and sometimes just knowing someone else gets it can make all the difference. The 22 Project is doing something different, using hyperbaric oxygen therapy and brain imaging to treat TBI and PTSD. They're approaching it medically, showing veterans the physical damage in their brains and then treating it. Watching that damage heal. It's not just talk therapy, it's actual medical intervention. The federal government's also starting to move finally. The Elizabeth Dole 21st Century Veterans Healthcare and Benefits Improvement Act, it passed in late 2024, and it's a big deal. It expands VA services, streamlines disability claims, increases access to mental health care, and funds homelessness prevention programs. The Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program distributed $174 million to community-based organizations working on prevention. Real money going to real programs. And the VA itself is working on lethal means safety, which in clinical terms is a way of saying make it harder to act on impulse. Firearms are the most common method in veteran suicides, and while I'm not here to debate gun rights, we can all agree that during a crisis, distance from lethal means saves lives. The VA offers free cable locks, runs education campaigns at keepitsecure.net, and they're testing peer-delivered programs where Veterans talk to one another about safety during rough patches. Veteran to veteran. That matters. There's also real research happening. Studies looking at which veterans are most at risk, what interventions work, how to reach the 2/3 who aren't in the VA system. Universities are getting grants. Data is being collected. Slowly, we're getting smarter about this. All of this is progress, real, measurable progress. But here's the thing, and this is important. All the programs and funding in the world don't matter if veterans don't reach out. And we won't reach out if we're convinced that asking for help is weakness, or that we're supposed to handle everything ourselves, or that nobody else could possibly understand. Let's bring this back to the forge for a minute. In a forge, you don't just crank up the heat and hope the metal turns into a sword. You have to understand what you're working with. You need the right temperature, the right pressure, the right technique. You need to know when to heat it up and when to let it cool. You need to know when to hammer and when to step back. Same with this crisis. We can't just throw awareness campaigns at veteran suicide and hope it gets better. We need to understand that the 19-year-old who just left boot camp is facing different challenges than the 65-year-old Vietnam vet who's been carrying trauma for 50 years. We need to recognize that the combat veteran isn't the same as a support specialist who did 4 years and got out. Not because one is more veteran than the other. We all served, we all sacrificed, but the challenges are different and the solutions need to be tailored. We need to stop pretending that every veteran is either a hero or a victim. We're just people. Some of us are doing great. Some of us are struggling. Most of us are somewhere in between, figuring it out day by day. And here's what I want you to take away from this. Veteran suicide is a real crisis affecting thousands of families every year. The numbers are bad, but they're not getting better by us just talking about them. We need action. The veterans dying aren't who most people think they are. It's not all young combat vets. It's older veterans. It's people who've been out for decades. It's veterans not connected to the VA system at all. It's not just about PTSD. It's about chronic pain, isolation, lack of purpose, financial stress, moral injury, substance abuse, and the brutal difficulty of translating military experience into civilian success. Help is available and it works. The Veteran Crisis Line is real and it's staffed by people who care, and calling it doesn't make you weak. Organizations like 22 Kill, Mission 22, Save 22, and the 22 Project are doing real work. And if you want to help them and support them, reach out. If you're a veteran and you're struggling, and I mean really struggling, you're not alone. Thousands of us are fighting the same fight. The difference between making it and not making it is often just reaching out. That's it. One phone call, one text, one conversation. I know this was heavy. I told you it would be. But I wanted to do this episode because I'm tired of seeing us lose good people who could have been saved. I'm tired of the silence around the real struggles of transition. I'm tired of veterans suffering alone because they don't want to be seen as weak or broken. If you're in a forge and the heat is too high, you don't just stand there and burn. You adjust. You ask for help. You find the right technique. Same principle applies here. Before we close out, let me give you the resources one more time. Veterans Crisis Line, dial 988. Press 1. Text 838-255 or chat at veteranscrisisline.net. It's available 24/7. This is the real deal. If you're not in crisis but want to connect with programs, One Tribe Foundation, mission22.org, save22.vet, support22project.org. And if you're looking for a community of veterans who get it, find your local VFW, American Legion, or Team Rubicon chapter, or join our Discord. Link is in the show notes. We're building something here at the Forge, and part of that is making sure nobody goes through this transition alone. Look, I get it. Asking for help is hard. Admitting you're struggling feels like failure. But you know what's harder? Missing the chance to get better because you were too stubborn to reach out. You survived training, you survived deployment, you survived things that would break most people. Don't let the transition be the thing that takes you out. All right, that's it for today. This was a heavy one. And if you made it this far, thank you. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review, a comment, like, share, and if it helped, remember, the Forge only works if you're willing to do the work. Stay strong, stay connected, and stay alive. This is Joey, and this is the Forge. Oh, and one more thing. If you're thinking about doing awareness campaigns or fundraisers or whatever, that's great. But also consider just calling that buddy you haven't talked to in a while. Check in on them. Not because you think they're suicidal, but because connection prevents isolation, and isolation is the real killer. Ask how they're doing. Actually listen. Don't try to fix everything, just be present. Sometimes that's enough. And if they say they're fine, but you're getting a weird vibe, ask again. No, seriously, how are you really doing? Give them permission to be honest. That's the real work. Everything else is just noise. All right now, I'm really done. See you next time.